Okay, this video now is going to go through the creation of the ellipse model. We're going to use the same dimensions for the cone. So if you want to just reuse the cone you have made already, that's fine. If you want to follow along from the start again for the practice, that's fine as well. So I'm just going to create it from new. And I'm going to use the same dimensions again. So 45 for the half of the cone, and the height is 120. I have my cone. I'm going to make it brown glass just so it's see-through. And we're going to have to start this process of finding the planes again. Okay, so with an ellipse, the angle of the plane is between horizontal and the angle of the cone. Okay, so if I just draw a line to represent that, that angle is somewhere between the angle of this cone and horizontal, so flat. If it was flat, it would just create a circular surface. And if it was the angle of the cone, it would create a parabola, as you've seen already. So it's somewhere between the angle of the cone and horizontal. Doesn't matter where exactly. So what we're going to do now is we're going to create two sketches like we did with the parabola to get 3 points. 3 points then allow us to create a plane. So we want a cutting plane going through that. So I'm going to sketch on the side there. So I'm going to use the right plane. And I'm going to go from the baseline through the object at whatever angle you want, okay? So like I said already, between the angle of the cone and that horizontal line. So that angle there will be fine. To make sure that's along the baseline, click it, hold Control, click the origin and make them horizontal. So that's one sketch. Close that. Now I want to rotate my view and create a straight line along that bottom plane. So on your top plane, create a line across now. So I want to make that base point of the first line coincident with that line there. So I might have to rotate the view a bit, get that point, get the line and make them coincident. I can close that sketch now. And what I can do is create a plane now using them 3 points. So features, reference geometry and plane. And I want to pick the 3 points, 1, 2, and 3. 3 points allows me to create a plane. I want to flip the normal. I want it pointing up the way. So I'm going to go down here and click flip normal. That just means I'll be looking in from the top direction then. I can hide the two sketches now. I no longer need them. And what I want to do now is create a planar surface cutting through the object. So sketch on that plane 1 and a rectangle like we did before. Again, doesn't matter too much about the size of it. Just try to keep it fairly centered. Don't have it over to one side. Try to keep it even on both sides as best you can. Okay, so there's my planar surface. I'm going to create or put a color on that. I'm going to make that green. And I can hide plane 1 now. So you can see a preview again of that ellipse being cut. What we want to do is find the actual curve of that now. You might find later on we'll have to extend this plane out. That'll be easily done and I'll explain that if we need to do it. So sketch on the plane. And I want to do convert entities, drop down arrow and click intersection curve and click the cone. Tick that, and that gives us that ellipse then that's being cut by the plane. We can close that sketch and we can color that in. So that's our ellipse now being cut by that plane. We need to find our focal spheres like we did before. The difference being now with the ellipse, we have two focal spheres. We have one in under and we have one over it here as well. So it's the same principle all over again, and we should be able to do it in one sketch anyway. Or no, we'll probably do it in two sketches actually, just to keep it simpler. So on that plane that allows me to see the planar surfaces and edge view, start a new sketch. I'm going to create a circle up in this top half of the cone, and I'm going to make a tangent to them edges. And if I make a tangent to this left edge as well, I don't have to do that relation, the vertical relation from the center point to the apex like I did before. All right, so it's just another way to do it. And a center line then again. Now I'm going to close that sketch and start a new one. I'll do the bottom one just while it's fresh in my head. So start a new sketch, circle. And now we want to make all these edges tangent. So if the circle's black, it's fully defined, can't be moved. If it's still blue, make sure to check that you have all the relations in place. Because if it's still blue, that means it can be moved. And if something goes wrong a few steps ahead, it might move on you and cause you then to run into a bit of bother. So we have two sketches now. We want to create them two spheres. So features, revolve boss base. I'm going to select that top sketch. That's my line of revolution. And untick merge result and untick thin feature. Go into the selected contours box and select one of the sides, and you can tick that then. Same again, revolve boss base, select the bottom sketch. In the axis of revolution, click that center line, untick merge result, untick the thin feature, and in sketched contours, it should be 1/2 of the sphere. So now what we have are two focal spheres. So where they are in contact with this plane, give us the focal points or the focuses of that ellipse. So I'm going to put a color on them now as well. And I'm just going to make the two of them red. So like before, we can't get into that sphere there, so we just look down over the left on the design tree and put the color over there. So we have our two focal spheres. We're going to use them now to find our directrix, two directrix, and our two focal points as well. So like we did before, start a sketch on that same plane so we can see that surface plane as an edge view. Draw a line from the center of that sphere out to the plane and to the edge of that cone as well. I'll do the two of these at once. So we need to add relations to make it perpendicular to them edges and perpendicular to the plane as well. And then what we'll do is we'll select the center points hold control, select all them center points and the apex and make them vertical. Now it's still not fully defined, so we can move it up and down. What we need to do now is make them concentric with them spheres. The bottom one's very easy. If we select the center, we can select this bottom edge that isn't under the cone and make them concentric. The top one's a bit more complicated, so we have to hide the cone for a second. Select that point, select the edge of the sphere and make them concentric. So we can finish that sketch and we can show that cone again. So what I'm going to do now is start another sketch on that plane. I'm just going to go over these lines from the center out to the surface plane. And then I'm going to rotate my view and just put points on the end of them. So that is my two focal points of that ellipse, and we can close the sketch and change the color of that sketch just to show that that's kind of a key feature or a key line. So where that sphere is in contact with the plane gives us the focal points of the ellipse. Now we need to create our two directrix. So what we're going to do is create two new planes and then two surface planes, find the line of intersection and so on. So I want them to be parallel to the top plane. So I'm going to drag out one of them edges while holding control. I'm going to select that point on the sketch we created, which in contact with the cone. And that is one of the planes. I'll do the same again, so I can drag from that one and do it for this top sphere here. So now I have two new planes to sketch on. I'm going to select that top one first and start a new sketch on it. I'm going to make it roughly the same size as the plane below it. And I'm going to close that sketch, or actually just go straight into surfaces, click planar surface. I can just check if that's alright. As long as it intersects this planar surface and intersects the cone, that's fine. So I'm going to put a color on that, like I did with the rest of them. Doesn't matter what color. And I can hide the actual sketch plane. Now I want to start a sketch on that. I want to go convert entities, intersection curve, and then find the intersection between that and this plane here. I'm going to close that sketch. I'm going to start a new one on the same plane just to keep them separate so I can put different colors on them, because if they're in the same sketch, they're going to have to be the same color. So I'm going to do the same thing again. This time I'm going to get the intersection between the cone and the plane. So that'll give me that line of contact between the cone, sphere, and the plane. All right. So it is the line of contact between the sphere and the cone that gives us the height for that plane to be on. We can close that sketch again, and I'll just color the two of them before I go any further. I want the directrix to appear black. Doesn't have to in your drawing, that's just my preference. And I'm going to make that something not too bright. Now on the bottom plane, I'm going to start a sketch and create another surface plane. So what I can do now, instead of drawing out that rectangle again, there's another feature we can use called convert entities. So if I click convert entities, click on that plane and tick it, what it'll do is transfer its shape down to that sketch, which is very handy, and it comes in fully defined straight away. So if you're doing a lot of things that are the same shape, you can use that feature instead of drawing it over and over again. Go to the Surfaces tab, click Planar Surface again, and we have another planar surface. Now we want to hide our sketch plane. Put an appearance onto the planar surface. Now what you might notice is we've used blue, green, and brown, so we're kind of running out of colours in this drop-down menu. What we can do is say put on green again. And if I go over here now to the left and click this tab at the top, that is the appearance manager. So that's all the appearances we have here. So this is green glass. If I go to the green glass and click the drop down arrow, I have surface plane 1 and then surface plane 3. So if I want to edit surface plane 3, I still want it to be glass, but I just want a different color glass. Right click on it and edit appearance. I can pick whatever color I want here now, so I can make it pink glass if I want. So it'll still be transparent and you can see through it, but it'll have that tinge of color. So if I tick that now, it'll show up in its own section here as green glass, but it'll have that pink color. So then just to go back to the normal view, click over here to see your design tree. So now we have 3 planes, 2 horizontal planes and our cutting plane. I'm going to start a sketch on the new horizontal plane. I'm going to go intersection curve, and I want it between that and the cutting plane, and that'll give me my other directrix. So they are equally distanced away from the ellipse on both sides. Okay, so an ellipse has 2 directrixes. We can close that sketch, and I'm going to color that black like the other one, and I want to start a new sketch on that plane again. Intersection curve, and click the cone this time. And that's given us the line of contact between the cone and the sphere, and that's the height that plane is drawn at then. So again, we can close that and put a color on that now if you want. So that now is a model of all the different parts of an ellipse and its construction. So a cutting plane, and the cutting plane is between the angle of the cone and the horizontal line or the horizontal plane. Okay, so that's cutting through the object, gives us an ellipse. Focal spheres are spheres placed inside the cone, in contact with the cone and in contact with the plane. Where they contact the plane give us the focal points. Where they contact the cone give us the height for these planes, which create the directrix then. So where they cut through the cutting plane then give us that directrix. Again, with this one, make sure to label the 2 directrix, label the focuses, label the ellipse. You might put in a label for the 2 focal spheres and the lines of contact.